I don't think these headlines are correct when people say the NHS is going to break. The NHS is broken. People are dying in corridors. I mean, what other definition of broken is there, you know? I am a doctor in the NHS. I've trained as an anaesthetist and at the moment I work in intensive care. I always say nowadays especially that I think yes, our job is stressful in its nature, especially people who do stuff like what I do because they're high stakes specialties. I mean, we're literally dealing with life and death and we take on a lot of responsibility. But you know, it's all stress that we can deal with to some degree and we sign up to it. Without a doubt, I chose this and I enjoy it to some degree. What we didn't sign up to was being so overstretched and so overworked. And that is a stress, I would say, that bothers me and my colleagues probably the most, that we feel so overstretched that what we are providing no longer feels safe. And that's not fair on us, and it's not fair on our patients, and it's not sustainable for any healthcare system. So the danger that I think we're seeing with paediatrics is that there are not enough doctors. So you are stretching a doctor who should be covering, let's say, 10 or 20 children to cover 30 or 40 children. Or you are making a doctor who works X amount of hours come in and work X plus Y amount of hours, which eventually leads to burnout. But in that time before the long-term problem of burnout, what you get in the short term is someone's being stretched. They are tired. They are more likely to make a prescription error. They are more likely to miss something out at work. And a prescription error in a child is so much more serious than a prescription error in an adult. I mean, there are all sorts of errors, big and small, for adults and children. But just imagine that one decimal place, take a drug that factor out by one decimal place or even just one digit wrong, and that can kill a child. We prescribe by weight in children. None of us want to train in a system that feels unfair and unsafe, and we already absorb that. We have for many years taken on that stress, and the NHS famously has run on goodwill. Nurses go without breaks, they go without weeing, doctors do the same, and we stay hours and hours beyond our contracted shifts because we care, and because we get so much out of our job and it's rewarding and we want to do the best by our patients, but that can't go on forever, and that goodwill has been lost, and increasingly so now. In this last year, we're seeing some of our best trained nurses leave the country, and I'm seeing some of my best doctor colleagues leave too. There is a crisis in paediatrics in particular, and I'm not sure that people realise how dangerous that is. I'm not sure that people I'm not sure that people take for granted that there will always be the right specialist to look after your sick child when your child goes into hospital. And paediatricians in particular have been really overstretched recently, and the changes in the contract have made it even more unattractive, and there are so many gaps in their rotas, and they've gone beyond trying to cover that themselves and being overstretched and being unsafe. They're now just leaving. And these are holes that are really, really big and really bad. And paediatrics is, I say, an especially bad example. But actually it's similar in A&E, it's increasingly so in anaesthetics. I've had multiple emails in the last few weeks looking for intensive care doctors to cover night shifts. And that's very, very worrying. To not have enough intensive care doctors to cover night shifts when you think, I go to cardiac arrests and I look after the 12 sickest people in the hospital in some places where it's smaller, or the 40 sickest in the larger hospitals. That's very worrying that they can't find doctors to fill those shifts, and people are suffering. Patient care is suffering, and people are dying. Whose responsibility is it? Well, I think starting with the government. How they choose to spend money, where they choose to spend money, it's a case of underfunding. And everyone has an individual responsibility to fight for the NHS.